The alarm bells rang through the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Indomitable. Captain Hyun-woo sat up straight in his chair as the communications officer turned toward him with wide eyes. "Sir, we're getting a distress signal," said Lieutenant Bo-ram, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "It's not from any human ship." Hyun-woo stood up and walked over to her station. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. They had been on routine patrol near the edge of human space for 3 weeks now. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. "Put it through the speakers," he ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had heard before. It was soft and musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but there was fear in it. Deep, terrible fear. "This is Viridian Prime of the Vellani people. We send this message to all civilizations who can hear us. Our world is dying. The Korthak have come to our system. They destroy everything. They eat everything. We cannot fight them. We have no weapons. We have never needed weapons." The voice paused, and they could hear what sounded like crystal breaking in the background. "We offer everything we have to anyone who can help us. Our entire knowledge base, all our technology, all our science. Please, if there is anyone out there who knows how to fight, help us. We do not want to die." The message ended with static. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Hyun-woo had heard of the Vellani before. They were one of the most peaceful species in the galaxy. They lived on crystal worlds and spent their time creating beautiful art and studying the stars. They had never hurt anyone. "Sir," said Navigator Taemin from his station, "I'm pulling up what we know about the Korthak." The main screen lit up with images that made everyone on the bridge feel sick. The Korthak looked like giant insects crossed with machines. But worse than that were the pictures of worlds they had attacked. Nothing was left. No buildings, no plants, no people. Just empty, dead rock. "They've destroyed 47 civilizations in the last 100 years, Taemin continued. "No one has ever successfully fought them off. They just keep coming until everything is gone." Chief Engineer Miran spoke up from her station. "The reports say their ships can heal themselves. Even if you damage them, they just grow back stronger." Hyun-woo stared at the images on the screen. He thought about the musical voice of the Vellani, full of fear and hope. He thought about their crystal cities that would soon be nothing but dust. "Open a channel to Earth Command," he said. "Sir?" Bo-ram looked confused. "Shouldn't we just report this through normal channels?" "No," Hyun-woo said firmly. "This goes straight to Admiral So-young, Priority 1. It took several minutes to establish the connection across the vast distance of space. When Admiral So-young's face appeared on the screen, she looked tired. It was late night on Earth. "Captain Hyun-woo, this better be important," she said. "Ma'am, we've received a distress call from the Vellani. They're under attack by the Korthak." The Admiral's expression changed instantly. She was fully awake now. "Send me everything you have, now!" The data transfer took only a few seconds. Hyun-woo watched the Admiral's face as she reviewed the information. Her jaw tightened with each image. "Ma'am," Hyun-woo said carefully, "the Korthak have never been defeated. Every military expert says they're impossible to stop." Admiral So-young was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Captain, those military experts have never seen humans fight a real war. On Earth, emergency meetings were already starting. The president was woken up. Military commanders were called from their beds. In less than an hour, the most powerful people on Earth were gathered in the war room deep under the Capitol. Admiral So-young stood at the head of the table, presenting the situation to the Earth Council. "The Vellani are offering us their complete technology database," she said. "Their science is hundreds of years ahead of ours in many areas, but more importantly, they're innocent. They've never hurt anyone. They don't even have a word for war in their language." Defense Minister Young-ho looked at the tactical displays. "Admiral, every report says the Korthak are unbeatable. 47 civilizations have tried to fight them. 47 civilizations are now extinct." "Those civilizations fought defensive wars," So-young replied. "They tried to protect what they had and hoped the Korthak would go away. We don't fight that way." President Yun-soo leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "Total war," So Young said simply. We take every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have, and we go to Viridian Prime. We don't try to chase the Korthak away. We destroy them completely. The room erupted in arguments. Some council members said it was suicide. Others said it wasn't their problem. A few pointed out that Earth had never fought an alien species before. But Admiral So Young was thinking about something else. She was thinking about humanity's history. About all the times they had been told something was impossible. About all the times they had been outnumbered and outgunned, but had won anyway. Quiet! President Yoon Soo called out. The room fell silent. Admiral, give me your honest assessment. Can we win? So Young looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. Ma'am, I don't know if we can win, but I know we're the only species in the galaxy that's crazy enough to try. The vote was close. 7 in favor, 5 against. But it was enough. Within an hour, orders were going out to every military base on Earth and in the colonies. The Third Fleet was to prepare for immediate deployment. Every experimental weapon was to be loaded and ready. Every Marine was to report for duty. Commander Dong Hyun received his orders while he was eating dinner with his family. By morning, he was on a transport ship heading for the fleet staging area. Around him, thousands of other humans were doing the same thing. At the Mars shipyards, Chief Engineer Mi Ran was overseeing the loading of weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Fusion missiles that could crack a moon, kinetic bombardment systems that could level a city, and something new, something the scientists called gravity bombs. The alien observers stationed on Earth watched all this activity with confusion. To them, humans seemed like a primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. How could they possibly succeed where advanced civilizations had failed? But they didn't understand humans. They didn't understand that humans came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years, a world with deadly weather, poisonous creatures, and diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Humans had learned to fight back against everything their planet threw at them, and they had learned to win. Captain Hyun Woo received new orders while the Indomitable was still patrolling near the edge of space. He was to proceed immediately to the fleet staging area and prepare for combat operations. As his ship turned toward Earth, he thought about the Villani message again. That musical voice full of fear and hope. Soon, they would have their answer. The humans were coming, and they were bringing every weapon they had ever invented. The Mars shipyards had never seen activity like this before. Ships from every corner of human space were arriving hourly, their hulls gleaming under the red planet's weak sunlight. The largest military fleet in human history was taking shape, and everyone knew where it was going. Lieutenant Bo Ram stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching as massive cargo ships unloaded their deadly contents. Weapons that most civilized species would consider war crimes were being loaded onto human vessels like groceries. "Have you ever seen a planet cracker before?" asked Engineer Chan Woo, joining her at the window. Bo Ram shook her head. The device, being loaded onto the dreadnought Vengeance, looked like a simple metal cylinder, but she knew it contained enough destructive power to shatter a world. "The Galactic Council banned them 50 years ago," Chan Woo continued. "Called them inhumane, weapons of mass destruction. Good thing we're not part of the Galactic Council yet," Bo Ram replied. Across the shipyard, alien observers from various species watched the human preparations with growing unease. The Zalani ambassador sent urgent messages to his homeworld, describing weapons that seemed designed for total annihilation rather than tactical warfare. The Thrakari military attaché was particularly disturbed by what the humans called biological warfare suits. He had seen similar technology before, but only in the hands of the most ruthless species in the galaxy. The fact that humans had developed them independently was deeply troubling. But the aliens didn't understand human military doctrine. Where other species developed weapons to wound or disable, humans had always built weapons to end fights quickly and permanently. They had learned long ago that the fastest way to save lives was to win decisively. Commander Taemin was in the briefing room of the flagship Determination, studying star maps with other fleet commanders. The route to Viridian Prime would take them through 3 different star systems, each controlled by different alien governments. "The hegemony won't let us pass through their space," said Captain Soo-jin of the heavy cruiser Retribution. "They're terrified of the Korthak. They think helping the Villani will just make the swarm angry." "Then we go around," replied Admiral So Young, who had transferred her flag to the Determination. It'll add 2 weeks to our journey, but we can't afford to fight 2 wars at once. Dr. HFY, the fleet's xenobiologist, had been studying every piece of information about the Korthak that humanity had managed to collect. The more she learned, the more she understood why no one had ever defeated them. They're not really individuals, she explained to the senior staff. Each Korthak unit is controlled by a central intelligence that coordinates their movements perfectly. They can't be surprised or confused because they all share the same mind. What about their regeneration? Abilities? Asked Sergeant Wansik. That's the interesting part, HFY said, pulling up biological scans on the main screen. They can heal from almost any single type of damage. Energy weapons, kinetic impacts, even radiation. But they've never faced multiple simultaneous damage types. Admiral So Young leaned forward. Explain. Their healing process has to prioritize, HFY continued. If you hit them with a plasma bolt, they adapt to energy damage. But while they're doing that, they're vulnerable to everything else. This information changed everything. Human weapons designers had always believed in redundancy. If one type of ammunition didn't work, they would try 5 different types at once. Chief Engineer Miran was working around the clock to modify human weapons systems. The fusion missiles were being equipped with kinetic penetrators. The energy cannons were being paired with chemical explosive charges. Every weapon was becoming a combination of different damage types. But the most ambitious project was happening in the deepest levels of the shipyard. Engineer Dong Hyun was overseeing the construction of humanity's newest weapon, artificial gravity generators. The theory was simple. The Korthak had evolved in space, where there was no gravity. Their bioships were designed to function in zero-G environments. But what would happen if they suddenly experienced the crushing weight of a planet's gravity? The calculations are perfect, Dong Hyun explained to Admiral So Young during one of her inspections. We can create gravity fields strong enough to simulate a gas giant. Nothing evolved for space travel could survive that. And what about our ships? So Young asked. Human ships are built to land on planets, Dong Hyun smiled. We've been dealing with gravity our whole lives. News of the human fleet's preparations spread throughout the galaxy. Most species reacted with confusion or fear. The peaceful Villani couldn't understand why humans were bringing such destructive weapons to help them. The warlike Korthak themselves took notice, with their scouts reporting unusual activity in human space. But one species reacted differently. The Zenthari, an ancient race that had survived 3 separate Korthak invasions by running away, sent a delegation to meet with the human fleet. Ambassador Velthar was old even by Zenthari standards. He had personally witnessed the destruction of 2 civilizations and barely escaped with his life. When he arrived at Mars, he requested an immediate meeting with the human leadership. You don't understand what you're facing, he told Admiral So Young in the conference room. The Korthak aren't just strong, they're smart. They learn from every battle. By now, they've probably adapted to counter every tactic that's ever been used against them. Have they ever faced humans before? So Young asked. No, but then they haven't adapted to our tactics, So Young interrupted. They've adapted to civilized tactics. We're not civilized when we fight. Velthar studied the human admiral's face. There was something in her expression that reminded him of predators from his homeworld. Something that suggested she might actually enjoy the coming battle. The alien left the meeting more confused than when he had arrived. Meanwhile, human soldiers were preparing for war in their own way. Private Ginny was writing letters to her family, knowing she might not return. Corporal Gihun was cleaning his weapons for the 100th time, making sure every component was perfect. But they weren't afraid. Fear was something humans felt when they didn't know what they were facing. The Korthak might be unknown to the galaxy, but they were just another enemy to humanity, and humans had a lot of experience with enemies. Sergeant Hanul was conducting training exercises with her Marine unit. They practiced boarding actions, close-quarters combat, and something humans called aggressive negotiations. The alien observers who watched these exercises were horrified by their intensity. They train like they're already at war, reported the Galactic Council's military observer. Their soldiers seem to enjoy violence in a way that suggests psychological instability. What the observer didn't understand was that humans had learned to channel their aggression. They didn't fight because they enjoyed killing. They fought because they enjoyed winning. The final ships arrived at Mars 3 days before the scheduled departure. The fleet now numbered over 300 vessels, from massive dreadnoughts to small fighter craft. It was the largest concentration of human military power ever assembled. Admiral So Young stood on the bridge of the Determination, looking out at the armada that would carry humanity's answer to the galaxy's greatest threat. Each ship was loaded with weapons that pushed the boundaries of physics. Each crew was trained to fight against impossible odds. Captain Hyun-woo received his final orders over the communication system. The Indomitable would serve as a fast attack vessel, leading the first wave against Korthak positions. It was dangerous work, but Hyun-woo had requested it specifically. "All ships report ready for departure," announced Communications Officer Yu-jin. So Young nodded. "Signal the fleet. We depart in 1 hour." As word spread through the armada, human crews made their final preparations. Some prayed to various gods. Others wrote last letters home. A few simply sat quietly, preparing their minds for what was to come. But all of them knew one thing. They were about to attempt something that 47 civilizations had failed to do. They were going to fight the Korthak, and they were going to win. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened something that humans cared about, and the Korthak were about to learn why Earth was called a death world. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Viridian system, and immediately every sensor on every ship screamed warnings. What they saw made even veteran spacers stop and stare. The Korthak had turned the outer planets into feeding grounds. Massive bioships, each one the size of a city, clung to the rocky worlds like parasites. Smaller attack craft swarmed through space like angry insects, their organic hulls pulsing with unnatural life. But it was the fourth planet that made Admiral So Young clench her fists. Viridian Prime, the crystal homeworld of the Villani, was still fighting. The beautiful crystalline cities that had once sparkled like jewels were now partially dissolved, but the planet was not yet dead. "Scan the surface," So Young ordered. "How many Villani are left?" The sensor operator's voice was tight with emotion. "Approximately 2 million, Admiral. Down from 8 million when the attack began." Captain Hyun-woo studied the tactical display from the bridge of the Indomitable. The Korthak formation was unlike anything in human military databases. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. No human fleet could maintain such precise formation. "Sir," reported Navigator Tae-min, "we are receiving multiple communications from the Korthak fleet." "Put it through," Hyun-woo ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was cold and mechanical, completely unlike the musical tones of the Villani. "Unknown vessels, you will withdraw immediately or be consumed. We are Korthak. We are inevitable. We are eternal." "Send a reply," Hyun-woo said calmly. "What should I tell them, sir?" Hyun-woo smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Tell them we're humans. Tell them we're here to kill them. Tell them to come and try." The response from the Korthak was immediate. The entire swarm began turning toward the human fleet, their bioships pulsing with aggressive energy, but Admiral So Young had expected this. "All ships, execute Battle Plan Alpha," she broadcast across the fleet. "Remember, we're not here to chase them away. We're here to end them." The human formation spread out in a pattern that would have looked chaotic to any other species. Instead of maintaining tight formations like traditional fleets, the human ships scattered across a wide front. Each captain was free to maneuver as they saw fit, trusting their training and instincts. This immediately confused the Korthak tactical systems. Their hive mind was designed to counter organized resistance, not the apparent chaos of human battle doctrine. For the first time in centuries, the Korthak hesitated. Commander Young-ho was leading the first wave in his heavy cruiser Defiance. As the Korthak bioships approached, he got his first close look at the enemy. They were horrific beyond imagination, part machine, part living tissue, with weapon ports that looked like gaping mouths. But Young-ho had fought on Earth during the resource wars. He had seen plenty of horrific things. These were just bigger and uglier. "Target the lead ship," he ordered. "Fire everything we have." The Defiance unleashed its full arsenal at once. Fusion missiles struck the bioship's hull, while kinetic rounds punched through its armor. Energy. Beams seared its surface while chemical explosives detonated deep inside its structure. The Korthak ship began to regenerate, its living hull flowing like liquid to repair the damage. But Dr. HFY's theory proved correct. It could only adapt to one type of damage at a time. While it healed from the energy weapons, the kinetic rounds continued to tear it apart. "It's working!" Young-Ho shouted. "The regeneration can't keep up with multiple damage types." Across the battlefield, other human ships were learning the same lesson. The Korthak were nearly invincible against conventional warfare, but human weapons had never been conventional. Captain Su-Jin was leading a squadron of destroyers against a cluster of smaller Korthak vessels. Her ships moved like wolves, working together, but maintaining individual initiative. The bioships couldn't predict their movements because the humans themselves didn't know what they were going to do next. "Break formation and attack independently," Su-Jin ordered. "Make them choose which target to prioritize." The human destroyers scattered, each one taking a different approach angle. The Korthak tried to coordinate their defense, but their hive mind was designed for perfect order, not chaotic improvisation. Lieutenant Boram was manning the weapons station on the Indomitable when they encountered their first Korthak bioship up close. The alien vessel was massive, its hull covered in what looked like tumors that pulsed, with internal light. "Sir," she reported to Captain Hyun-woo, "I'm detecting something strange. There are other life signs inside that ship." "What kind of life signs?" "Multiple species, hundreds of different biosignatures." Boram's voice became quiet. "I think they're keeping prisoners inside those ships." Hyun-woo studied the scanner readings and felt something cold settle in his stomach. The tumors on the bioship's hull weren't tumors at all. They were prison cells. Living beings from conquered civilizations were trapped inside the Korthak vessels, kept alive for purposes he didn't want to imagine. "Signal Admiral So-Young," he ordered. "She needs to see this." When the information reached the flagship, the entire human command staff gathered around the sensor display. What they saw changed the nature of the battle completely. "They're not just killing them," said Dr. HFY, her voice filled with horror. "They're keeping them alive, integrated into their ship systems. Look at these neural pathway readings. The prisoners are conscious. They've been conscious this whole time." Engineer Dong-hyun stared at the display with growing rage. "How long have they been like this?" "Some of these biosignatures are from species that were conquered decades ago," HFY replied. The bridge of the determination was silent for a long moment. Every human present was trying to process what they had learned. The Korthak weren't just conquerors or even murderers. They were something far worse. Admiral So-Young's voice, when she finally spoke, was very calm and very cold. "All ships, this is Admiral So-Young. New intelligence indicates that Korthak vessels contain living prisoners from conquered civilizations. These beings have been tortured for decades. Our mission parameters have changed." She paused. "And when," she continued, there was steel in her voice, "we are no longer engaging in warfare, we are performing pest control. Show no mercy. Give no quarter. Burn them all." The human response was immediate and devastating. Ships that had been fighting cautiously now pressed forward with reckless aggression. Captains who had been preserving ammunition now emptied their magazines in sustained barrages. Sergeant Won-sik was leading a boarding party onto a damaged Korthak vessel when they found the first prison chambers. What they discovered inside made hardened Marines sick to their stomachs. Beings from a dozen different species were plugged into the ship's systems, their minds connected to the vessel's neural network, but still aware of their fate. "Get them out," Won-sik ordered. "All of them, now." But as his Marines worked to free the prisoners, they realized something terrible. Many of the beings had been integrated so completely that removing them would kill them. They had to choose between leaving them trapped or ending their suffering. The choice was made for them when the freed prisoners, speaking through translator devices, begged the humans to destroy the ship with them still inside. Death was preferable to continued existence as part of the Korthak collective. Won-sik and his Marines were evacuated just before Captain Hyun-woo ordered the Indomitable to destroy the bioship completely. As the alien vessel broke apart in fire and vacuum, Won-sik wondered how many other prisoners they were unknowingly killing. But there was no choice. The Korthak had made mercy impossible. The battle raged for 6 hours, and slowly the tide began to turn. The Korthak ships were regenerating more slowly, their adaptive systems overwhelmed by the variety and intensity of human weapons. For the first time in their species' history, they were losing a battle. The Korthak Queen Mind, controlling the swarm from a massive bioship deep in the system, began to experience something it had never felt before: uncertainty. These new creatures fought unlike any species it had ever encountered. They seemed to grow more aggressive as the battle continued, not less, and their weapons were designed not just to kill, but to cause maximum destruction. The humans weren't trying to disable Korthak ships. They were trying to obliterate them completely. As night fell over the Viridian system, the first phase of the battle was ending. The outer system was cleared of Korthak forces, and the human fleet was preparing for the next stage of their attack. But the real war was just beginning. The Korthak Queen Mind was adapting, learning from this first encounter. And the humans were about to discover that their enemy had reserves they hadn't even suspected. The galaxy's greatest predator had finally met its match. But the deathworlders weren't finished yet. The second day of battle began with a surprise that changed everything the humans thought they knew about the Korthak. As Admiral So Young reviewed the overnight sensor data, she realized their enemy was far more dangerous than anyone had suspected. "They've been calling for reinforcements," reported Dr. Yoon Soo, the fleet's intelligence analyst. "Long-range sensors are detecting at least 50 more bioships approaching from deep space." So Young studied the tactical display with growing concern. The arriving Korthak vessels were different from the ones they had fought yesterday. These were larger, more heavily armored, and their biosignatures suggested they had been modified, specifically for combat against human-style weapons. "They're adapting faster than we expected," she said. "How long until the reinforcements arrive?" 18 hours, Admiral." So Young nodded grimly. The humans had 18 hours to finish this fight, or they would be facing an enemy that had learned from their tactics. But she had her own surprises to reveal. "Signal Commander Dong Hyun," she ordered. "Tell him it's time to test the gravity. Weapons." On the heavy assault ship Anvil, engineer Dong Hyun had been waiting for this moment. The artificial gravity generators had been installed hastily, using technology that was still largely experimental. But if his calculations were correct, they would give the humans an advantage that no spaceborne species could counter. "Bring us within range of the largest bioship," he told Captain Kang Day. "We need to be close for this to work." The Anvil approached the massive Korthak vessel, which was easily 10 times the size of the human ship. The bioship's weapons began tracking them, preparing to fire, but Dong Hyun activated the gravity generator before they could attack. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Korthak vessel, designed for zero-gravity environments, suddenly found itself experiencing the crushing weight of artificial gravity. Its organic structure, which flowed like liquid in space, began to collapse under its own weight. "It's working!" Dong Hyun shouted. "The bioship can't maintain structural integrity under gravity!" But the victory was short-lived. Other Korthak vessels began moving to assist their damaged comrade, and the humans realized they were facing a coordinated response unlike anything they had seen before. Captain Hyun-woo was leading a strike force toward Viridian Prime when his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. The Korthak weren't just attacking the planet's surface, they were converting it. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Boram, "the crystal formations are being altered at a molecular level. They're turning the entire planet into some kind of biomechanical structure." Through the main viewport, they could see the transformation happening in real time. The beautiful crystal cities of the Villani were being dissolved and rebuilt into organic towers that pulsed with alien life. The planet itself was being turned into a Korthak nest, but worse than the physical transformation was what they detected in the cities themselves. The surviving Villani weren't just being killed, they were being absorbed. Their consciousness was being integrated into the growing biomechanical network, adding their knowledge and memories to the Korthak collective. "We have to stop this," Hyun-woo said. "Signal the fleet. All ships focus fire on the conversion sites." The human response was swift and brutal. Fusion missiles rained down on the biomechanical towers, while kinetic bombardments shattered the crystal structures that were being transformed. But for every site they destroyed, 2 more appeared. Commander Young-ho was leading the ground assault when he got his first close look at what the Korthak were really doing to their prisoners. His Marines had fought their way into one of the conversion sites, and what they found there would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The Volani weren't dead. They were connected to a vast network of organic cables, their minds linked to the Korthak Collective, but their personalities still intact. They were aware of what was happening to them, aware that their bodies were being used as components in an alien war machine, but unable to resist. "Please," one of the Volani whispered through a translator device. "End this. We don't want to become them." Young Ho and his Marines faced an impossible choice. They could try to free the prisoners, knowing that most would die in the process, or they could destroy the facility completely, killing everyone inside but preventing their further suffering. The decision was made when the facility's defenses activated. Korthak warriors, grown from the absorbed biomass of previous victims, emerged from the walls themselves. They looked like nightmarish combinations of every species the Korthak had ever conquered. "Fall back," Young Ho ordered. "Prepare the facility for orbital bombardment." As his Marines evacuated, Young Ho set the targeting beacons that would guide the fleet's weapons to this location. In 10 minutes, fusion fire would reduce the entire complex to radioactive ash. It was mercy and murder at the same time. But the Korthak had their own surprise waiting. As the human fleet concentrated its fire on the surface conversion sites, massive bioships emerged from underground caverns where they had been hiding. These vessels were different from anything the humans had seen before. They were purpose-built for planetary assault, with weapons designed to crack continents. Admiral So Young watched the new threat emerge and realized the true scope of what they were facing. The Korthak hadn't just arrived at Viridian Prime to consume it. They had been preparing this system as a fortress for months, maybe years. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "Those planetary assault ships can crack our hulls like eggshells." The battle in orbit became a deadly dance as human ships tried to stay mobile while the massive Korthak vessels attempted to pin them down. The bioships moved with surprising grace for their size, their living hulls flowing and reshaping to optimize their combat performance. Captain Su Jin was piloting her destroyer through a maze of Korthak fire when she noticed something crucial. The bioships were protecting specific areas of the planet's surface with particular intensity. "Admiral," she reported over the communication system, "I think I've found their command center. There's a massive structure on the southern continent that they're defending with everything they have." So Young studied the tactical display and saw what Su Jin meant. The Korthak were maintaining a defensive formation around a huge biomechanical complex that hadn't been there when they first arrived in the system. That's it, she realized. That's where their queen mind is located, the central intelligence controlling the entire swarm. Dr. Acha had been studying the Korthak communication patterns throughout the battle, and she had reached the same conclusion. Every command signal is originating from that location. If we can destroy it, the entire swarm will lose coordination. But reaching the queen mind would require fighting through the heaviest defenses the Korthak could muster. The bioships guarding the complex were the largest and most heavily armed vessels in their fleet. "Signal all ships," So Young ordered. "We're going to attempt a direct assault on the command center. This is what we came here to do." Sergeant Wansik was preparing his Marines for what everyone knew would be a suicide mission. The plan was simple. Fight through the orbital defenses, land on the planet's surface, and somehow penetrate the Queen Mind's fortress. "Sir," asked Corporal Gihun, "what are our chances of success?" Wansik checked his weapons one more time and smiled grimly. "The same as always, Corporal. We either win or we die trying." But as the human fleet prepared for its final assault, the Korthak Queen Mind was making preparations of its own. It had studied these strange new creatures throughout the battle, analyzing their tactics and psychology. What it discovered disturbed the ancient intelligence more than any enemy it had ever faced. These humans didn't fight like rational beings. They fought like something that enjoyed violence for its own sake. They seemed to become more dangerous as the odds against them increased. For the first time in its long existence, the Queen Mind felt something approaching fear. The humans were unlike any species it had ever encountered. They came from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years, and they had learned to kill it back. They had turned survival itself into an art form, and now they were bringing that art to bear against the Korthak. The Queen Mind began preparing its final defenses, knowing that the next few hours would determine whether the Korthak remained the galaxy's apex predator or whether they would become extinct at the hands of these impossible creatures from a death world called Earth. The real battle was about to begin, and the humans were just getting started. The final assault began at dawn over Viridian Prime, when Admiral So Young gave the order that would either save the galaxy or doom humanity. Every ship in the human fleet turned toward the massive biomechanical complex where the Korthak Queen Mind waited, knowing that most of them would not survive the next few hours. "All ships, this is Admiral So Young," her voice echoed across the fleet. "Today we face something that has destroyed 47 civilizations. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten innocent people in front of humans. Make them regret every life they've taken." The Korthak response was immediate and overwhelming. Bioships emerged from hiding places across the planet's surface, their weapons charging with energy that made space itself ripple. The defense of their Queen Mind would be total. No human ship would be allowed to reach the surface alive. Captain Hyun-woo led the first wave in the Indomitable, diving through a storm of organic projectiles that moved like living things. His ship's hull groaned under the impact of bioweapons that seemed designed to cause maximum pain rather than simple destruction. "Sir," reported Navigator Tae-min, "we're taking heavy damage. The bioweapons are eating through our armor." "Then we better reach the surface before they eat through the hull," Hyun-woo replied calmly. "All power to engines. We're going down fighting." Behind him, dozens of other human ships were making the same desperate run. The Korthak defenses were designed to stop organized fleets, but the humans were attacking like individuals. Each ship choosing its own path, each captain making split-second decisions that no hive mind could predict. Commander Young-ho was piloting his heavy cruiser through a maze of bioship fire when something unprecedented happened. The Korthak Queen Mind spoke directly to the human fleet, its voice echoing through every communication system. "Creatures from the death world," the voice was cold and ancient. "You fight for beings you have never met against an enemy you cannot comprehend. Why do you choose extinction when we offer you survival?" Admiral So Young's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "Because that's what humans do. We fight for people we've never met because it's the right thing to do. And we don't negotiate with monsters." The Queen Mind's reply sent chills through every human who heard it. "Then you will join the others. Your consciousness will be preserved forever as part of our collective. You will watch as we consume your homeworld and everyone you have ever loved." "Looking forward to it," So Young replied. "But first, we're going to teach you what fear feels like." On the planet's surface, Sergeant Wansik and his Marines were fighting their way through biomechanical landscapes that seemed designed by a mad god. The ground itself was alive, trying to trap their feet with tendrils that erupted from the earth. The air was filled with spores that attempted to invade their respiratory systems. But human environmental suits had been designed for the worst conditions Earth could produce, compared to fighting in Earth's deep ocean trenches or toxic volcanic regions. This was just another hostile environment. "Keep moving!" Wansik shouted to his squad. "The longer we stay in one place, the more this planet tries to eat us." Corporal Gihun was using a plasma cutter to clear a path through a wall of living tissue when his scanner detected something impossible. "Sergeant, I'm reading human life signs inside this structure." Wansik checked his own scanner and felt his blood freeze. Somehow, impossibly, there were humans inside the Korthak complex. But the nearest human colony was hundreds of light years away. "How is that possible?" asked Private Jin-A. The answer came when they breached the wall and found themselves in a chamber that defied description. Floating in biomechanical pods were beings from dozens of different species, including 3 humans in Earth Defense Force uniforms. One of them was still conscious. Commander Yujin read the name tags and realized with horror that these were crew members from the exploration vessel Discovery, which had been reported lost with all hands 2 years ago. "Please," the conscious human whispered, "we've been trapped here for so long. It keeps us alive to study our memories. It knows everything about Earth now, everything about our defenses." Wansik felt rage building in his chest like a nuclear fire. The Korthak hadn't just tortured aliens, they had tortured humans. His own people were trapped in this biological hell, their minds connected to the enemy's network. "Get them out," he ordered. "All of them. Now." But as his Marines worked to free the prisoners, the Queen Mind's voice echoed through the chamber. "You cannot save them. They are part of us now. Through them, we have learned about your species. We know your weaknesses." "Yeah?" 1-6 snarled, back. "Well, we learned something about you too. You can die." The rescue operation became a running battle as Korthak bio-warriors poured into the chamber. But these weren't the coordination nightmares the humans had faced before. These creatures moved with desperate fury, as if the Queen Mind itself was afraid. Captain Kong Day was leading the orbital assault when engineer Dong Hyun made a discovery that changed everything. The gravity weapons weren't just affecting the bioships. They were affecting the Queen Mind itself. "Sir," Dong Hyun reported, "the Queen Mind's structure is showing stress fractures. It's never experienced gravity before. The artificial field is disrupting its neural networks." Kang Day studied the readings and smiled grimly. "Then let's give it a taste of what we deal with every day on Earth. All gravity generators, maximum. Power!" The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Korthak. Their Queen Mind, a vast biomechanical entity that had grown in zero gravity for thousands of years, suddenly found itself experiencing the crushing weight of a heavy world. Its screams echoed across every frequency as its delicate neural structures began to collapse under their own weight. For the first time in its existence, the ancient intelligence felt physical pain. But the Queen Mind had one final gambit. Using the absorbed memories of the human prisoners, it activated a protocol that would destroy the entire planet rather than allow itself to be defeated. "All ships, emergency withdrawal," Admiral So Young broadcast. "The planet is going critical," but Sergeant Wansik and his Marines were still on the surface, still fighting to rescue the prisoners. There wasn't time to evacuate everyone. "Sir," Private Ginny said quietly, "we can't carry all the prisoners and reach the extraction point in time." Wansik looked at the freed captives, dozens of beings from species he had never seen before, plus the 3 humans who had been tortured. For 2 years, they were all looking at him with hope in their eyes. "Then we make time," he said simply. "No one gets left behind. That's what humans do." What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Wansik and his Marines fought a running battle across a collapsing planet, carrying prisoners who couldn't walk and defending beings they had never met. They held defensive positions until the last transport could lift off, buying time with their lives. Some of them didn't make it. Corporal Gihun fell defending the final extraction point. Private Jinne died ensuring that a wounded Villani child reached safety, but they died as humans, protecting others until their last breath. As the planet cracked apart behind them, the survivors looked back at Viridian Prime's death throes. The Queen Mind's final screams were audible across the entire system, as its ancient consciousness was crushed by forces it had never imagined. But the humans had achieved something unprecedented. They had defeated the Korthak completely, not just driven them away, but destroyed their central intelligence and freed thousands of prisoners. Captain Hyun Woo was among the survivors, his ship damaged but intact. As they fled the system, he received a transmission from the freed human prisoners. "Thank you," Commander Yujin said, her voice weak but grateful. "We thought Earth had forgotten about us?" "Earth never forgets," Hyun-woo replied. "And we never leave our people behind." The victory came at a terrible cost. Nearly a third of the human fleet was destroyed or damaged beyond repair. Thousands of Marines and sailors had died fighting in conditions that would have terrified most civilized species. But they had succeeded where 47 other civilizations had failed. The Korthak were finished, their Queen Mind dead, and their bioships drifting empty in space. The galaxy would never be the same. And everyone would remember that when the innocent called for help, the deathworlders had answered with weaponry and courage that changed the course of history itself. 3 months after the Battle of Viridian Prime, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Korthak, an unstoppable force that had terrorized civilizations for centuries, were gone. Their bioships drifted empty in space, their Queen Mind destroyed, their empire shattered. And it had all been accomplished by a species most aliens considered primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. Admiral So Young stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Concordia, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of different species. Many of them were staring at her with expressions she couldn't quite read: fear, respect, confusion, and something that might have been gratitude. "The Council recognizes Admiral So Young of the Human Defense Forces," announced the Thrakari speaker. "You have requested to address this assembly regarding the recent events." So Young stepped forward, still wearing her battle-scarred uniform. She had refused to change into diplomatic clothing, wanting the Council to remember exactly who had answered the Vellani distress call. "Honored representatives," she began, "humanity did not seek recognition for our actions at Viridian Prime. We did what any civilized species should do when innocent people call for help." A ripple of movement went through the assembly. The hegemony. Representative raised one of his forearms. "Admiral, our military analysts indicate that your forces used weapons that most species would consider excessive." "We used the weapons necessary to win," So Young replied calmly. "The Korthak had destroyed 47 civilizations. They were not going to be stopped by polite requests or defensive measures." The Zalani ambassador spoke up next, his crystalline voice tinkling with concern. "But surely there could have been a negotiated solution. Violence should always be the last resort." So Young studied the alien's face, trying to understand how any intelligent being could be so naive. "Ambassador, the Korthak were keeping prisoners from conquered civilizations as living components in their bioships. Some of those prisoners had been conscious and suffering for decades. What exactly would you have negotiated with them?" The assembly fell silent. The freed prisoners from various species had already given their testimony to the Council, describing horrors that most civilized minds couldn't process. There had been no negotiating with the Korthak because they didn't view other species as anything more than resources to be consumed. Captain Hyun-woo was in the observation gallery, watching the proceedings with mixed emotions. The human fleet had returned home to a hero's welcome, but the cost of victory weighed heavily on everyone who had survived the battle. Beside him sat Dr. Cha, who had spent the last 3 months studying the biological remains of the Korthak Empire. Her findings had disturbed even the most hardened military scientists. They weren't just conquerors, she had reported to the Earth Council. They were a cancer, a species that had evolved to consume and absorb other forms of life. If we hadn't stopped them at Viridian Prime, they would have eventually consumed the entire galaxy. The Vellani representative, a graceful being whose crystalline features still showed signs of the trauma his people had endured, rose to address the Council. "Honored members," his musical voice was stronger now than it had been in his species. "Distress call. My people owe our existence to the humans. They came to our aid when no one else would. They fought an enemy that everyone said was unbeatable. And they won." He paused, looking directly at Admiral So Young. "But more than that, they showed us something we had never seen before. They showed us what it means to fight for others without asking for anything in return." Commander Young-ho was on Earth, visiting the families of the Marines who hadn't come home. It was the hardest part of his duties, but also the most important. Each family deserved to know that their loved one had died protecting innocent people. At the home of Private Jin-A's parents, he sat in their small kitchen and tried to explain how their daughter had saved a wounded Vellani child, carrying the alien youngling to safety even as the planet collapsed around them. "She could have saved herself," Jinny's mother said quietly. "Why didn't she?" Young-ho thought about all the easy answers he could give, but settled on the truth. "Because that's who she was. Because that's who we are. We don't leave people behind." Back on Concordia, the Galactic Council was debating humanity's place in galactic civilization. Some species argued that humans were too violent, too unpredictable to be trusted with advanced technology. Others pointed out that humanity had just saved the galaxy from its greatest threat. The debate was interrupted when a new transmission arrived from the edge of known space. Another distress call, this time from a species the Council had never heard of. They were under attack by something called the Devourer Swarm, and they were begging for help. The Council chamber erupted in panicked discussions. If there was another threat like the Korthak, could they survive it? Who would be brave enough to investigate? Admiral So Young stood up slowly. "If I may," she said, and the chamber fell silent. "Humanity will investigate this threat. We'll determine if it's a genuine emergency or a false alarm. Admiral, the Thrakari speaker said carefully, this could be another species as dangerous as the Korthak. Your forces are still recovering from the last battle. So Young smiled, and for a moment, every alien in the chamber remembered that humans came from a death world. Speaker, that's exactly why we're the right choice for this mission. We know how to fight monsters. 2 weeks later, the human fleet was assembled again, this time with volunteer ships from several grateful species. The Villani had contributed their advanced sensor technology. The Zenthari provided intelligence about the Outer Rim. Even some former members of the hegemony had quietly offered support. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, now repaired and refitted with lessons learned from the Korthak battle. Beside him, Lieutenant Bo-Ram was monitoring communications from the new distress signal. Sir, she reported, the transmission is still active. Whatever's attacking them, they're still fighting. Then we better hurry, Hyunwoo said. Signal the fleet. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. As the human armada disappeared into hyperspace, carrying hope and firepower to another corner of the galaxy, the news spread throughout civilized space. Humanity had established itself as something unprecedented, a species willing to fight anyone's war if the cause was just. The galaxy had new guardians now. They came from a violent world that had taught them to never give up, never surrender, and never abandon those who needed help. They had weapons that could crack planets and the will to use them against anyone who threatened the innocent. Engineer Dong Hyun was working on new weapons designs, inspired by what they had learned fighting the Korthak. The next time humanity faced an impossible enemy, they would be even better prepared. Dr. Yun-Soo was establishing the Galactic Defense Protocol, a new organization that would coordinate responses to existential threats. Its headquarters would be on Earth, and its primary military force would be human. Sergeant Wonsik was training new Marine units, teaching them the lessons learned in the biomechanical hell of the Korthak complexes. His motto had become the unofficial slogan of human military forces. No one gets left behind. The Korthak had been the galaxy's nightmare for centuries. They had consumed entire civilizations and turned their victims into living weapons. They had seemed unstoppable, inevitable, eternal, but they had made one fatal mistake. They had threatened innocent people while humans were watching, and humans, as the galaxy was learning, had a very particular reaction to bullies. They tended to hit back hard. As the years passed, the story of Viridian Prime became legend. Children of a dozen species grew up hearing about the deathworlders who had answered a desperate call for help and changed the course of history. The galaxy was a safer place now, protected by beings who understood that sometimes the only way to preserve peace was to be very, very good at war. And whenever new threats emerged from the dark spaces between stars, they would find the same thing waiting for them. Humans with advanced weapons, tactical brilliance, and an absolute refusal to let evil triumph. The galaxy had sent an SOS. The deathworlders had answered with weaponry, and nothing would ever be the same.